All right, now we're going to do a refined lesson for lesson 14, which just takes us through all of the different kinds of problems we've had during this lesson and gets you prepared for your quiz. We should be on page 287 of our workbook, and we should have a pencil, and we should follow along with me and pause that video whenever you need to. So again, we've been working on adding and subtracting within story problems. So reading that story problem and really understanding, is it asking us to add or is it asking us to subtract? So let's look at our example. It says Stephen buys a movie ticket for $14.75 and then buys some snacks for the movie. He spends a total of $19.23. How much did Stephen spend on snacks? So if he spent this total, and then this was the price of the movie ticket, we're just taking this and subtracting this, right? So they did this by rounding to the nearest tenth. But you can also just go ahead and subtract 19 and 23 hundredths, which is the same as 23 hundredths. So it is kind of like a fraction, and subtracting 1475. Okay? But they showed you that here's 19 and 2 tenths, which is about that rounded. And if we go to here, that's minus 2 tenths, minus the 4 to get to 15, and then minus 2 more tenths. Where he was about the 1480, which is what this guy is, right? So it's about 4 and 4 tenths. All right. But this will give you the exact answer. All right. Number 1. Parker mixes 3 1/2 ounces of blue paint with 1 2/5 ounces of yellow paint to make green paint for the leaves of a tree. How much ounces of paint did Parker make? So if we're using our benchmark fractions, a half is a benchmark. So if we use 3 1/2 with 1 and, well, what's close to 2/5? Yeah. Is 2/5 closer to 1 or is it closer to a half? Well, 2/5 would be the same as 4 tenths. Which is about a half, because 5 tenths would be a half. So it's going to be about a half, but we know it's not exactly. So our answer should come out somewhere close to a half and a half is a whole, and 3 and 1 is 4. So our estimation is about 5, okay, ounces. So, but let's do the actual computation for 3 1/2 plus 1 2/5. Okay. What is our common denominator going to be? It's going to be 10, right? So I'm going to multiply 5 over 5, because 5 times 2 is 10. 1 times 5 is 5. 5 times 2 is 10. We just said that. So 2 times 2 this time, that's our 1. That's our 1. 2 times 2 is 4. So 5 and 4 is 9 tenths. Isn't that really close to 1 whole? And 3 and 1 is 4. So 4 and 9 tenths is our whole amount, which is close to 5. So we know that we're in the right ballpark. And that's important. If you have to buy paint, to know to buy the right amount, right? Number 2. Jamie's football has a mass of 435,000 kilograms. His football helmet has a mass of 2 57 kilograms. Estimate how much more the mass of the helmet is than the mass of the football. Explain your estimate. So here's when it says how much more the mass of the helmet is than the mass of the football. That tells me we're comparing. And when we're comparing, that means we're subtracting. We're looking at the difference between these two numbers. Okay? So if I'm doing an estimate, I'm going to look at 435,000, and I'm going to look at that and go, is that closer to 4 tenths or 5 tenths? And if I'm looking here at 35 hundredths, it's actually closer to 4 tenths. And then 2 57 kilograms is closer to 2 6 tenths. So 6 and 4 is 10. So it's the estimate is closer to 3 whole. Except I added instead of subtracted, Mrs. Mather. This is actually a subtraction problem. So this is what they would be if we were combining them. But that is not what they asked us to do. So let's take a look at that again. It's asking us the difference, so 2, and if we go to 6/10, because this rounded to the nearest tenth, would be 6/10 minus 4/10 is 2 and 2/10. So that's the difference between the two, which is what it is asking us. How much more is the mass of the helmet, because the helmet weighs more than the mass of the football. All right, now they're get back on track here. Number 3, which is a reasonable estimate for the difference between 5 1/2 minus 3 5/9? 5/9 is really close to a half, isn't it? Because 5/10 would be a half. It's a little bit more. So if we were looking at it somewhere, if we said 5 1/2 and we were subtracting 3 5/9, if we said that this was like a half, 5/9, then we would say, well, then it's 5 minus 3, which is around 2-ish. So where would our number fall? Where would our answer fall? Right, it's going to fall somewhere between 1 1/2 and 2 if we actually did it. So they chose D, and the reason is because we went, this 5/9 is greater than a half, but we brought it down to a half. So our estimate's actually going to be a little bit under. And so they thought it was a little bit over. Number 4. William compares monthly rainfall amounts for the summer months using the table below. Which estimate is closest to the actual difference between the rainfall amounts for June and July? So right now we're just using June and July. Which estimate is closest to the actual difference between the rainfall amounts for June and July? So if we're looking at these, 3/16 is almost the same as 1/4. It's just under, because 1/4 would be 4/16. So that is very close to 1/4, this 3/16 here. So the difference between 3/4 and 1/4 is 1/2. And 3 minus 3 is 0, so. All right, and number 5. Carter is at the school store. He wants to buy a pack of notebooks that costs $4.79, a calculator that costs $33.54, and a tablet case that costs $12.67. About how much money does Carter plan to spend at the school store? Will the actual cost be more or less than your estimate? So I'm going to round $4.79 to $4.80. I can take $12.67 and round that to $12.70. And $33.54, I can round that to $33.50. And I'm going to get a pretty close estimate. Another way I could estimate this would be to go to the whole dollar. If I wanted to just do this in my head, I would go to the whole dollar. So $4.79 to the nearest dollar is $5, but I'm over here, right? $12.67 to the nearest dollar is $13, and $33.54 to the nearest dollar would be $34, but that's a big jump there. But you could do it. If you want to just do this in your head and make sure you have the right amount, you could just add these for your estimate and go that 5 and 3 is 8, 4 is 12, and so I need about $52. But I know my estimate is higher than the actual cost, because the actual cost, each of these was lower, so it won't cost quite $52. So it's just asking for an estimate. It's not asking for an exact amount. Number 6, a certain liquid boils at 165 and 6200 Fahrenheit. The liquid is currently at 68 and 8/10 Fahrenheit. Jimmy says that the temperature needs to rise by about 125 degrees to boil. Without finding the actual difference, explain why Jimmy's estimate is or is not reasonable. So if the liquid's currently at 168 and 8/10, that's about 70, right? And if I added the 70 and the 125, that would be 195. So that's not reasonable because this number's too big. Yeah, because it only has to get to 175. And he added quite a bit more on than he needed. So let's find the actual amount that the temperature must rise for the liquid to boil. So if it's currently at 68 and 8/10, and if it boils at 175 and 62/100, let's find out what the rise has to be for this to get to that number. So we're subtracting. So 2 take away 0 is 2. 16 take away 8 is 8. Decimal comes straight down. 4 left. Borrow set of. So 14 subtract 8 is 6. And 6 subtract 6 is 0 and 1. So it really only needs to come back up 106 and 82/100. So he was over by quite a few degrees over here. All right, number 7. Ramona has about 1/5 gallons of red paint. She knows she needs at least 12 3/4 gallons to paint her whole house. Use benchmark fractions to explain about how much more paint Ramona needs. So if you did a number line or something like that, and you were at 4, here's 4. And remember, benchmarks are 1/4, 1/2, 3/4, 5, and so forth. Excuse me. So 4 and 1/5 is going to be a little bit less than this guy. So she's right here right now and wants to get to 12 and 3/4. So if you're at 4 and you need to get to 12 and 3/4, so if you're at 4, how do you get to 12? Or if you're at 4 and about a 4th, can you go to 12 and 1/4? So that would be plus 8, right? If you're at 4 1/4 about with this, and you want to go to 12 1/4, that's plus 8. And then it's another plus 1/2 to go from 1/4 to 3/4. Pretend like I left out all these numbers in the middle here, okay? So really, it's about 8.5 more gallons that she's going to need. So we didn't have to find the exact answer, just about how much more does she need. All right, so hopefully that this will help you, and come in at 11 o'clock today for the math group, and we'll do the B version of the quiz, and then you can take the quiz and you'll have all the information you need.